The Boys. What a show. Regardless of how you feel about the overall quality of the series, there's no denying that it delivered some of the most interesting ideas in a superhero satire. The most fascinating elements of the entire show was, of course, Homelander, and the possible direction the creative team could have taken him, and by extension, the entire series as a whole. However, the ending seemingly didn't live up to a lot of people's expectations.
Stop! You owe me.
So today I want to explore that. What did fans actually want out of this story, and is there any real merit to the direction the series ultimately went? If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, and without further ado, let's get started. There's no doubt that the earlier seasons of The Boys created a very specific expectation of where the story would go. By the end of season 3, Homelander is basically at a mental breaking point. From the viewer's perspective, it was pretty clear where both his character and the series as a whole were headed.
In the end, only one of us left standing.
In a key scene, Homelander and Billy Butcher agree that they very much hate each other. They make a pact. They will fight each other at the very end of the world. As they described it, this would be
Scorched earth. Shock and awe. Blood and bone.
a scorched earth, a world brought down and destroyed by Homelander's violent rampage. All the anger, resentment, and hatred Homelander had bottled up for years would finally be unleashed. The entire world itself would be at his mercy. Once millions had died, once the world was destroyed, Billy Butcher would confront him and their final climactic battle would begin. There was no reason to think that this was not the direction the show was going as a whole. In fact, the series gave us every reason to believe this was exactly what they were building up towards. First and foremost, Homelander's mental state and its slow deterioration was one of the central pillars of the entire series. It's actually strange and surreal to rewatch the earlier seasons because you can see his mental decline so clearly. In season 1, he's genuinely cunning and charismatic to the point where it's creepy just how normal he seems. However, after the death of Madeline Stillwell, the mutilation of Stormfront, Soldier Boy's disdain, and many other events, it felt like it was only a matter of time until he snapped completely. This was made even more evident at the end of season 3, where Homelander kills a person in broad daylight, something he would have never done before. With all that buildup, fans naturally created an idea of where the story was going by season 4. Homelander, now receiving public support despite his clear murders, would begin to act however he wanted. He would kill whoever he wanted in broad daylight and nobody would do anything to stop him. Then, due to some kind of devastating circumstance, Homelander would lose everything close to him, leading him to snap completely and destroy the world. Billy Butcher was also expected to go down a similar path of mental decline, especially since even season 4 established them losing his mind over time. The expectation for many fans was that Butcher would fully lose his remaining humanity and go on a brutal one-man warpath to hunt down Homelander. He would become more unhinged and ruthless with every step, possibly even turning on and killing members of the Seven. This dark descent would perfectly parallel Homelander's own mental breakdown, creating a tragic symmetry between the two deeply broken men consumed by hatred. By the final season, Butcher would be operating almost entirely alone, willing to cross any moral line and sacrifice anyone necessary to reach his enemy. I gotta say, I myself was pretty convinced that this was where everything was going. Homelander's mental decline was one of the most fascinating parts of the entire show, and I just couldn't wait to see his trauma come forth and reveal him as a more pathetic murderer. Seeing how violent Homelander already was, I'm sure most viewers wanted to see how the creative team would handle his character going forward.
He can hear crowds from miles away. He follows panic.
Recently, there's been a series of The Boys analog horror videos exploring exactly what a scorched earth plot would look like. All of them are told from the perspective of everyday ordinary people who witness Homelander's full mental breakdown in person. They're shot in a found footage style, complete with creepy music and public service announcements. In a world where Homelander finally snaps, there's unfortunately nothing anyone can do to stop him. With his abilities, he begins to burn down everything in front of him, attempting to kill as many people as he possibly can. And to be honest, who would really stop him at this point? It's because of videos like this that you realize just how terrifying Homelander can be once he fully let go of any humanity he might have had. An unstoppable demonic force that hunts down everybody regardless of whether they're a man, woman, or child. In some of these videos, Billy Butcher is the one man still seeking to fight Homelander despite the very world coming to an end. It's very much a one man against God plot. Now you can definitely see why so many fans wanted this to be the direction the creative team took the final season of The Boys. Not only had the plotline been set up all throughout the entire show, but having a season where Homelander snaps and the boys have to fight him in a broken world would have been very interesting. It even seemed like the marketing team felt this would have been interesting as well. Because in a series of promotional posters for the show, the idea of a scorched and apocalyptic Earth with Homelander and Billy Butcher meeting at the end of the world was one of the most prevalent kind of posters that were generated. This was not the direction the show ended up going. However, before we do continue, if you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing if you're enjoying what you see so far. Thank you. Okay, so in season 4 of The Boys, instead of Homelander going even more insane and choosing the scorched earth route, he, with the help of Sister Sage, manages to gain control of Vought and also holds significant influence over the US government. Using that power, he begins rounding up people into prison camps. So it's not exactly the scorched earth path we had imagined, but there was still an interesting story here worth telling. What kind of world would be created with Homelander at the seat of power in the country? We've already seen the kind of crap he managed to pull off as leader of the Seven, so it would be interesting to see how he'd run the entire country into the ground and how the boys would stop that. Billy Butcher also seemed to be heading down a warpath towards Homelander, so the expectation for some fans was that in the final season, Butcher would be on a rampage-filled mission to reach Homelander, all while Homelander slowly destroys the country and eventually loses his mind completely, going insane and bringing upon a scorched earth, with Billy and Homelander confronting each other in that destroyed world. Well, the 5th and final season did come out eventually, and unfortunately these ideas weren't really embraced, especially the idea of Butcher going down that warpath to Homelander, as he basically returns to the status quo with the team. I will say that the whole idea of Homelander having massive political influence over the country was completely and utterly wasted. I don't actually think the concept was used in any kind of fleshed out or interesting way. It felt like Homelander occupied the same position of power that he always did, and every time I saw him exercise that power to kill someone or do something morally disgusting, I didn't really feel much about it. The previous seasons had already established Homelander as this raging prick who did everything he wanted regardless of those around him. So he was just doing much of the same thing here, with no real interesting additions to the plot. As Edgar states in the comics, Homelander is just doing everything anyone would do with that kind of power. Nothing truly interesting. That said, something original and interesting did come out of this. The idea of Homelander becoming deluded enough to think he's literally God was a completely random plotline, I will admit. The scene is funny, sure, but it's not exactly a moment that makes perfect sense in the context of the entire narrative. This is where we expected Homelander to snap completely, but instead, he actually turns even more deluded and insane. Okay, so the plot is kind of random, but I wouldn't say that it's a terrible direction to take his character. Delving into the insanity of Homelander in this way was a bit more unexpected than the predictable route we thought his character was going, and this god complex did create some of the most interesting character moments for him. He already held so much power, but was completely powerless to change anything in his life, and he could never convince anyone to love him because of the reputation he had formed for himself. So it does make sense that the only way he can rationalize the tragedy of his life is by deluding himself into thinking he's God. If he's God and convinces everyone of it, then people have to love him unconditionally without ulterior motive. If he's God, then people being scared of him is only natural. A God-fearing society is the only way order can be maintained. And if he's God, it must mean he's infallible. It must mean that he really made no mistakes in his life. And he does have a purpose because he's the purpose for so many people in this world. Calling himself God is the only way he can make sense of everything that's happened in his life.
I am God!
But it's also the ultimate excuse for the monster he had become. Instead of a scorched earth where Homelander destroys everything, he creates a fake earth of delusion, one where everyone loves him and he can completely ignore and forget about everything he had done. However, it is Billy Butcher in his final confrontation who reminds him that he really is human after all. It's the loss of his powers that reminds him he can't forcefully forget what he had done. It's the loss of his powers that reveals who Homelander had always been and how pathetic he really is. In a Scorched Earth storyline, this would not exactly be handled in the same way. Homelander can't run away from the monster he had become because by that point, his acts of destruction are him fully embracing the role that had been created for him. There are no more excuses and no more hiding behind any form of trauma he experienced as a child. Billy Butcher's end was pretty satisfying, all things considered. Sure, he didn't go on a killing spree of all his friends, but that was to be expected. The Scorched Earth direction fans expected is interesting, and for the longest time, this is what I wanted as well. The final season didn't go that direction, and honestly, I was disappointed by a majority of what the season did. However, all things considered, when you look at Homelander's end in the final season, as well as the final moments of Billy Butcher, it is pretty well done. However, who cares what I think? I want to know what you think. Did you prefer the Scorched Earth final season, or are you happy with the direction the series went? If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and check out the videos shown here.